Okay, we're going to continue on with photosynthesis. And so I'm going to review what we did last time, talk about where photosynthesis takes place, its importance. I'll describe the light reactions and the dark reactions or the Kelvin cycle. And so again, nice picture of a sunflower here showing on the upper picture, showing you the amount of photosynthesis on the surface of the Earth. Really, really important process that determines the composition of our atmosphere, the availability of food and energy for the whole ecosystem of the earth and for humans. Really, really important. In photosynthesis, carbon dioxide from the air plus water is converted using sunlight energy to a sugar and to release oxygen. This produces virtually all the energy used by life on Earth. Not all, but virtually all. There are some systems deep in the ocean that rely on chemical energy produced by the Earth. And there are some other systems, maybe underground, that might do the same thing. But most organisms depend on photosynthesis, which include us. All the food that we eat comes from photosynthesis. The air that we breathe, the uh, the cotton clothes that we wear, the wood that we use, the fossil fuels that we use, where the energy for that was all trapped by photosynthesis. So a really, really important process. And this is called oxygenic photosynthesis because it's carried out by organisms that are releasing oxygen. So not only is it the food we eat, it's the oxygen that we use to aerobically break down that food. So, so this is done by microorganisms like cyanobacteria, algae like dinoflagellates or um, various diatoms, various others, also by the land plants, which we're more familiar with. And we'll talk more about land plant anatomy. Um, the photosynthetic reactions in land plants occur the um, in the chloroplasts of land plants. And these chloroplasts have structures in the structures called the thylakoids. It's an internal membrane inside the chloroplast. That is where the light dependent reactions occur. Here, sunlight is trapped, and the energy from sunlight is used to make ATP, and water is split, releasing oxygen, and then the hydrogens are and electrons are trapped in NADPH, an energy carrier. Okay, this process also involves reactions that don't depend on light. They're the dark reactions or light independent reactions, or probably the name I prefer is the Kelvin cycle. And the Kelvin cycle uses ATP and NADPH and carbon dioxide from the air, and that carbon dioxide is thereby reduced and made into a sugar. Okay. Photosynthesis occurs in the leaves of plant. There are several layers of cells there. There's a secreted portion called the cuticle, but the upper cells are called the epidermis. They will probably have uh, some chloroplasts in, but this underneath there is mesophyll, and mesophyll will be the main area where um, chloroplasts are and where photosynthesis is taking place. Then another layer of epidermis and cuticle. Um, the chloroplasts and chlorophyll are located in those mesophyll cells and to a lesser extent in the cells of the epidermis. Also here you can see little pores in the bottom of the leaf. These are called stomata. These are going to let in carbon dioxide when they're open, and they let out oxygen. Uh, as a byproduct, plants also use some water. Okay, so photosynthesis occurs in chloroplasts. The light-dependent reactions occur in the inner membrane, in the thylakoids, and in the stacks of thylakoids called granum. These light-dependent reactions require water, and they make oxygen. Then the light-independent reactions, or Calvin cycles, occur in the fluid-filled areas around the stroma. These require carbon dioxide, and they use the ATP and NADPH made in the light-dependent reactions. Those light-dependent reactions then are providing the energy for that Kelvin cycle. Okay. All of this depends on the pigment chlorophyll. Chlorophyll contains a porphyrin ring with magnesium held by a complex of nitrogens. There are different types of chlorophyll. They differ in this spot up here called the R spot. Photons excite electrons in this ring. There's alternate single and double bonds there, and then they can be shuttled away from the rings. Some accessory pigments, again, also with single and double bonds, can absorb photons and scavenge away free radicals. They may be useful to shuttle energy to the chlorophyll molecules in low light situations. Pigments are arranged in large complexes called antennal complexes. Um, these consist of chlorophyll molecules and other molecules linked together and held tightly in the membranes of the chloroplasts. And so these are in the thylakoid membranes. These are molecules here. This is what it looks like. Sunlight hits these molecules and electrons are shuttled to a reaction center. The proteins are transmembrane proteins, and light energy hitting one of these pigment molecules can transfer energy to the reaction center, and then that allows the process to take place. Once chlorophyll is oxidized, its electrons, it can pull in electrons from a donor molecule, which in this case will be water. So here's a little picture. Light hits the chlorophyll, the energy from the light boosts the electrons to a higher state. The electrons are um, moved to an electron acceptor, and the donor is oxidized, the donor in this case being water. So these light-dependent reactions involve first a photo event where light is captured by a pigment molecule, then the separation of charge where the energy is transferred to the reaction center, and an excited electron is transferred to an acceptor molecule. Electrons then move through other proteins that are embedded in the membranes that are electron transport proteins, and then ATP is produced through chemiosmosis, okay, which has the same exact molecule that we found in aerobic respiration, that's ATP synthase. Okay, chloroplasts have two connected photosystems, one that functions a lot like sulfur bacteria, and a second one that functions to generate enough um, potential to oxidize water, to take electrons away from water. So working together, these photosystems carry out the movement of electrons that are going to generate ATP and NADPH in the light reactions. So here you see them. The initial boost comes in photosystem 2. Then you get the electrons passing through the electron transport proteins, and this produces ATP. Water is oxidized there, and then the second photosystem is going to generate NADPH, which contains hydrogens and electrons that are going to be used in the Calvin cycle. What this really looks like is very similar to what happened in the mitochondria, except here the light is the ultimate supplier of energy. But again, you have electron transport, and you develop a hydrogen ion gradient, and then ATP synthase is what's generating the ATP, and the hydrogens are carried by the NADPH. So this is another example of chemiosmosis. The same enzyme is used. Okay. We also generate additional ATP here, and because ATP is really going to be crucial, we're going to use that in the Calvin cycle to build carbohydrates. So there's our energy source. Okay, the reduction potential comes from that NADPH. Okay, so the Calvin cycle can't happen without the light-dependent reactions. I always put this in the Calvin cycle, named after Melvin Calvin. It's also called C3 photosynthesis. Okay, the goal of this is to fix carbon dioxide by attaching it to ribose bisphosphate, and that forms a 3-carbon molecule called PGA. The enzyme that does this is ribulose bisphosphate catalase, or rubiscose. Okay, this reaction, we're not going to know too many details here, but it does happen in three phases. The carbon fixation, which I just talked about. Then NADPH is used to reduce this PGA to G3P, and then we regenerate RUBP. And if we do this enough, we can produce enough to produce extra G3Ps, and two G3Ps can be converted into sugar. Or excuse me, six of these are converted into sugar. Okay, so glucose is not a direct product here, but we can form it to form sucrose, and we can make starch. These photosynthesis uses the products of respiration as the starting point, and respiration uses the products of photosynthesis as the substrates. And we even use glycolysis kind of run in reverse. So this should be very similar to aerobic respiration, or you should notice some similarities. We also do electron transport, similar to how we do it in the mitochondria. So the Calvin cycle is the second part here. I won't ask so much that you know this, other than that you know that this uses a lot of ATP and NADPH, and eventually this is going to produce sugars. And so we're kind of getting to this picture here where um, the oxygen that's needed for electron transport is produced in uh, the chloroplast. Okay, and so that helps aerobic organisms break down sugars to get release carbon dioxide, which are going to be the substrate here. That's kind of our main focus for today. Um, we, we we can I think we can stop there, and I'll pick up photorespiration and the different types of Calvin cycle reactions the next time. So it's a lot to get, but we'll work on it some more on Wednesday.